All right. So welcome everyone to the 16th Techspressionist Salon. Today is Tuesday, April 27th. My name is Colin Goldberg, and we have three artist presenters today. Randi and Randi, could you help me out with pronouncing your last name?
Sure. Matushevitz.
Matushevitz. Okay, I didn't want to butcher it.
It's
Gary
okay.
Hopkins and Roz Dimon. Yeah, so we're going to go into the presentations. Each artist will get, 10, 15 minutes to share. You can feel free to share your screens if you wish. And then we'll just kind of open it up for, general discussion. People can bring up topics if they want. We'll just kind of, have it be kind of informal like that. So, Randy, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So, hi, everyone. This is my first time presenting here, and I'm glad to be able to catch these meetings when I can, being from the West Coast, because then, it's prime time, 11 a.m. for other groups. So, let me share my desktop with you. Let's see. There we go. Can you all see that? So, I'm originally a painter, and such an oil painter where I paint a lot of faces. I'm interested in gestures and silent communication, what other people are thinking. I don't know if you've had this experience, but sometimes when I see faces and people, I think I know what they mean or they're feeling or going through something. And over this last year, my mother was diagnosed in home hospice. And I started to work with my phone as I lay with her. And I was able to bring my still paintings into facial recognition, animation, apps. So some of you are really amazing, and I hope to grow in my technical abilities. But I've started to create images that move to express these facial us in different ways. Um, so this is one of the first times I'm showing my video work. I recently showed them in a gallery in LA Shockbox where I just was able to project. This is a very new place for me. And again, working with faces and to translate emotions. So these are some NFTs I made for BG Gallery out here in Santa Monica. Um, and he did this NFT show. And again, it's the silent communication, tapping into what's human in the world of AI, looking at AI to mirror, and I hope I'm using the terms right, who we are and what we do, especially in this time of such great division, and just having respect for another human being is challenging. And as you can see, I'm capturing states of mind and really translating a feeling and trying to create some human connection through this feeling. So these are some of those, and you see how they go. What I started to do, and I'd like to show you something that I made for, this is Queenie, in using one of the characters from my paintings to tell a story. And Queenie was showed alongside another character, Toulouse, who you had seen moving earlier. And together they have this conversation. And I've started to add sounds through different sound platforms, where you can choose to, you pay so you can use the rights to them, and then I layer them to create my own sound. And I don't know if you can hear it in this presentation because they're very low they were low for the gallery.
Are you using Adobe Character Animator for this, or?
My big secret is mug life, and
Oh yeah, that's great.
and there's another facial capture. So I go on to animate other characters, and I'm very aware of timing for this. So I want to show you one that will be on the Helms Design building sometime this summer, and this is Coiffed. Oh, this is Fame. Sorry, wrong one. Let me stop this one and go to, I think they got mixed up. My apologies, guys. But an instance of, here's Coiffed. And this will be in silence and again projected outside a building. I'm very excited to share it live on drive-by. It's a 3-minute, again, celebration of being human. I really, I'm into this subtle thing. I just love facial expressions and gestures, and I'm inspired by the way we watch movies in a lot of ways. So this one gets kind of lengthy to watch the whole thing, but you can see it's her story and her interaction with other characters. So it's so yeah, I'll be really curious to see how this lands on you guys and what you think of this kind of work. It's new versus showing analog paintings and creating stories through multiple paintings. And I'm really very interested in that slow gaze and yeah, that expression of being human. It's about the only thing I can give to the world is my hopes that we'll treat each other a little better and recognize we're all as important in our own lives, right? So there's a real philosophy, and it's just, I'm trained formally live model, painting faces, breaking it down, lighting them. And this is the foundation for this work, you know, all that live drawing and painting. And now the expression I get from filters and layers and layers. So I'm using all of the Leap suite. I am learning, and I'm using iMovie and Rush Premiere. Just bought a new laptop so I have more power so I can play with more of the Adobe. This is brand, you know, you guys talk about VR and AR, and I'm like so blown away by the possibilities the technology is bringing me. And yeah, and then where that could take me in the future. So you see how how Coiffed is going. And they're just all these states of mind. So for time's sake, I'll move because it does get on. And this is a recent NFT that, sorry for the dog, let me give her a treat. And the new thing I'm doing is I've been working with a digital company to digitally map, again, the painting of, just to remind us of Toulouse. So then I can produce this as a 3D sculpture, sorry for the dog, and work on digital mapping to project the videos onto them, or multiple videos. I'm not really sure where that will take me. Let me give the dog a carrot real quick or she won't stop. I apologize, guys, for that. So
that's really a compelling work.
thank you.
Yeah.
I was a little nervous showing it. I haven't really shown it to anybody. I'm not in the NFT Now show, which is okay, and I won't take it personally. Ha ha ha. I remember you. No, just kidding. But thank you for looking, and any other thoughts, I'd really appreciate it. It's all brand new for me, and I'm just happy to be able to have this group and to be awed by all of you and how long you've been pursuing technology. And I'm just lucky it's all begun to the phones and to our life, you know, easy breezy, easier. I'm not coding.
You know, Randy, as someone who's always tried to bring some kind of intimacy and what I call touch to this digital space, I did write it in my comments, but you bring us, I mean, it has such an emotional connection, which, you know, in Zoom we can have that. And I also think with digital work, at least that's been interesting to me, to not remove people, but to enfold them into and bring access into a work of art, while retaining its mystery. And you certainly are doing that.
I love the your idea of the two characters that are painted that are having that conversation and telling that story. I mean, that's just like mind blowing. I mean, that's like illustrated storytelling in its finest. And that would be something to really explore, I think.
And Randy, I really love these. I think they are beautiful. They work great. And I have two quick questions. Have you exhibited them in a gallery? And if so, do you project them on a wall or on a monitor?
So this is my first, I did in April. I had two exhibitions at the same time. So I had this, and again, I'm learning that I need more lumens. Everything's new for me. And I bought these Kodak Lumen. Can you see? I'm trying to see if my camera, no, my camera has my thing. Anyway, I bought this Kodak Luma 350, and I bought a few of them. So then I had to learn how to suspend them. And then one gallery was afraid someone would steal it, and they made had someone make this contraption to hold it onto the base. The second show was in so that's Ventura, in this place, Art City, in Ventura County in California. And then the second was again in April in Hermosa Beach at a gallery called Shockbox. And I was able to suspend the cameras from the ceiling because they play upside down. And I had Toulouse and Queenie playing at the same time. And I was very fortunate. It got written about in Artillery magazine and Gallery Rounds. So I felt by Jeannie Davis, and that was like, wow, I couldn't believe it. You know, that was really a blessing because again, first time. And then at the same time, I found out I was being like that Helms had accepted work and asked me to make a 3-minute video and that would fit their dimensions. So yeah, I'm projecting them, but I have small like photo screens. I didn't really like it. I have plugged my USB into my television. I like that. I like it when it could be bigger, but I haven't really purchased any of those flex screens or rented them to try them at home, you know. So I'm open to, you know, I've been reading about Tony Ausler and Nam June Paik, so I'm thinking digital mapping. I'm thinking what about old TVs. So I'm thinking of more ways to bring them, you know, to people. But right now, I'm just so excited to show them as characters, and then those heads. You know, what will that look like, and what will it look like to have a room of paintings and video, and then this digital mapping onto those sculptures. So now I've ordered small ones. Again, you know, I tell you who I'm looking at, so you see the lineage, and just making the paint talk has been just fulfilling my goals so much. I never knew that I would enjoy it so much and get frustrated too, because how do I make it different? How do I make it unique? And even what's behind me is a still from a video, you know, and then to see these new images that I'm trying to paint, and I just wind up like throwing the paintbrush at it because I can't copy that, you know, in paint. So there you have it. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
I really love your work, Randy. It's wonderful. A lot of my work, even if it's up on Instagram, those are just like little lessons of what I'd like to learn on the computer, and I put them up there as individual paintings, but the full animations are stories. So I really love the fact that you're blending this emotion and sort of abstraction of the figure, but keeping the human. And I work with a musician, and I also have soundtracks on mine. But I'm finding it's really hard to find a gallery who won't turn the sound down. So I was wondering how you handle that in terms of giving the artwork its full due?
When that's why I wind up in iMovie, because I don't know how to do different things, and in Rush Premiere, or sometimes the apps allow me, whatever lets me control the sound. So at the end, I'm trying to remember if it might have been an iMovie, I controlled the in and out of the volume, the fade, and then I kept playing with it and playing it back till it was low enough, and playing it out loud in my house, because I'd take my same projector and project it and listen to what they would let me, because of it's COVID, so nobody got a headset. My so there could have been a headset or a wireless headset someone could have put on. So that's how I handle it. That's why you couldn't hear Queenie in the presentation, because it's so low that the gallery didn't have to turn it off. And it wasn't continuous through the whole video, so they were okay with it. So that's how I handle it. Push the button until I
thought the painting, seeing the paintings come to life was really magical, and kind of startling. But then other things with it kind of broke the magic of it. And I think what you're trying to do is very ambitious and very difficult. So it's sort of always a fine line. So when they start talking, it's like it's so creepy, and it's all that uncanny valley stuff and all the issues that you were talking about. But for instance, when I saw the teeth to me don't mesh, with the painting. So it almost looks like they have dentures or something. So look, maybe if you painted some teeth, or the teeth weren't showing for whatever reason, like it took me out of that world, the magical world of your painting.
Yeah.
And then bringing in all the sort of geometric effects, the sort of kaleidoscoping and mirroring and everything, also like that was sort of a different realm. It wasn't in your painterly realm, which is really beautiful. I think there's so much there just in making the painting come alive, which usually when people, like make Van Gogh's sky swirl around, it's just really stupid. But like it's very creepy and cool when it comes alive. And I think you can go deeper in that, just that thing. Like you don't need all that other stuff.
Great.
And that it can just be so strong with just that.
Because that's how they all start. They all start with that first animation, or continue where I go back and make more of those clips, and I keep, and then there's the limits of the current tech I'm using and the apps I'm using, and the teeth come with that, and I haven't been able to get rid of the teeth. I hope as I move into the Adobe suites that I will be able to maybe pull them out, so to speak, and just and see what else I can do. Because when I do paint teeth, because I do have paintings with teeth, and then it gets double teeth, like it gets weird, or you see it looks like white foam on the mouth, when I start to distort them. So if anyone has any tips, just put your name in the chat, or something. I'm gonna find you.
I would encourage you to use Premiere and do
After Effects, actually, for that.
And After Effects
for the masking.
Yeah, I actually liked the section that I saw with the face and having an overlay of a video, of somebody driving down the road, and I thought it could lend itself to really interesting psychological territory with the overlays. But that you would have to use Premiere, and it's so much easier to get things done in Premiere than iMovie.
No, right. In Rush, you mean not Rush Premiere, but just the full Premiere, right?
Full Premiere, yeah.
Yeah, that is definitely on my list of places to go. So that, again, my first ventures is what you're seeing, and trying to each app or layer them. Or I was very concerned, like Anne, you're saying creepy, scary, good. I had the first people I showed those to, it's bad. And so I tried to, like you say, create different, more expansive stories. But that's part of what I'm looking forward to on the heads. Can I just put those quote unquote creepier ones that are just the moving faces on them? And we'll see. But I will check out.
Very rich psychological territory.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Thank you. And that's where I want to play. That is where I am, and I've always been in somewhere between dystopia and euphoria.
After Effects has a really powerful character animation rig plugin that they may have spun off to actually be its own separate program now. I can check for you, but I
Oh,
think
thank
that
you.
might be really good.
Oh, this is terrific. This is what I was hoping, was to get guidance and more knowledge and just places to go. And Carter, just so you know, that desert stuff, that's me. I started also along this route. So I've started playing with my phone more. I'm filming, when we're on the freeway. I'm
Yeah.
filming, going back and forth since my mom passed to
Mhm.
her to now my home in Las Vegas, as we keep going back and forth there and revisiting childhood things. So there's just, yeah, thank you everybody.
Yeah, and I wanted to chime in, Randy. I'm familiar with your traditional media work here in the Los Angeles scene, so it's really great to see you going into the digital with it and how it translates. And so I think it's great, and it opens up a whole new, bit of potential, and to really expand your expression. It's looks great. There's a lot of potential coming across. And I was okay with the abstract, non-objective effects added to the faces, and that it opens up narrative space in a way, and it furthers augments the abstraction, which is, I think, I think it's a good thing.
Thank you. I think there's room for both, and I think depending on the project and the exhibition, the displaying of it, and the venue, then it will help curtail the bodies of work that gets shown or interact at any given time, because I'm still playing with them. Everything you saw here is everything I'm playing with and just want to work with more. This is the base of the wheelhouse, and I love the way all of them are, even though, yes, the teeth I would like to do more with the teeth. I want to make crooked teeth. I actually just played with Monster, and I did a whole bunch of my face as Monster, and I'm laying that into some of them, and I, just to see what it does, since I love horror movies. So thank you.
Okay, cool.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Randy. Yeah, that was great. So let's see. I guess next up is Gary. If you want to take the mic.
All right. I guess let me do the share screen.
All right. And anyone that isn't speaking, just if you could mute yourselves, that'd be appreciated, just to keep everything quiet.
Sure. Okay. So I have been a painter ever since I was like 10 years old, but I was really pushed into science and math by my parents. So, and I love science. And so I spent 35 years in computer programming for business applications and systems design, but always was doing painting. And somewhere back in the 80s, early 90s, a friend of mine had a digital camera, and I'd never heard of such a thing. And he was showing me that, and I thought, wow, I want to be able to make paintings. So what I'm going to show you here is kind of my evolution as an artist using digital media and certain concepts that have carried along over the years. I started out basically like this is a picture of the house I lived in Portland. Now I live in Central Oregon, in a beautiful area with mountains and desert. But this was, me kind of taking an image off of a camera, and I was using Corel Painter at the time. I was kind of a software junkie, and I would use any painting program I could get my hands on. Photoshop was kind of out of my reach at the time, and I didn't really. I thought it was mainly for photography, which I came to change my mind later on. So I used MS Paint and did a lot of different photographs that my son gave me when he was on a trip in Europe. Simplifying a photograph into the color saturated, simplified environment of a painting. And that was something that really appealed to me strongly. And so I took a lot of pictures around in my neighborhood and my friends, and kind of turned them into paintings. And here's some, using different colors, not using color, make it more like a drawing or charcoal work. And that was kind of an exciting time, and I did a lot of work along those lines. This is a place in Italian beachside. I think it's a famous place. Some other works where you go in and manipulate the photograph and paint in the colors and the richness that you want. And eventually I started getting more abstract, using the same photographs. This is called New Temple. So that was kind of, I spent the first probably 20 or 30 years being a watercolor painter, and was used to layering and working from light to dark and building up layers. And so once I got into working digitally, that was kind of how I approached it, because I didn't really have any other concepts about how to do painting. But I loved digital, and I loved being able to eventually, get it on paper. That was one of my big things, was learning how to print it, how to get the colors that I wanted to come out on the paper that I was seeing on the screen, because the screen is light, and in the color range, the total gamut is quite different than what winds up getting on the paper. And I learned a lot by trial and error about that I really needed to saturate the colors more intensely, and certain colors like blues and stuff would go to black on paper if you weren't careful. So I eventually learned about ICC profiles and found better quality papers and printers that helped me achieve that. And artistically, I was a landscape painter, and eventually I wanted to use more colors. So I moved into looking at Impressionist and Fauvist art, and I've kind of been an art student my whole life in art history. And you can see as I moved along, these are evolving over the years, where get more into, this is called Mountain Road, but the roads around here are very twisty and turn, and it kind of developed as kind of a symbolic language for mountains and water and movement, and kind of wrap that around in an abstract and more brightly colored color work. And there's one called Oceanside. So I was still at this point creating landscapes in a way that were more abstracted, but still using somewhat naturalistic colors. And here's Soft Beginnings. It's a landscape, much softer, a dreamscape sort of. Then I began to learn more about masking and colors and layers, and really started pushing the envelope in an experimental way for a landscape. And then from that, even further towards a more abstracted language, but really showing the hand of the artist. And I had a lot of exposure in the Portland area to the Portland Art Museum, that has a huge collection of Japanese and Chinese screens, painting, and woodcuts. And their whole view of how to walk through a landscape, instead of from an aerial perspective or a perspective of the Renaissance, it's more of an experiential space where you you're in one particular spot, and then the next spot on the canvas might be from a totally different perspective. So a lot of those concepts have integrated themselves into the work as I moved along. And so this one is called Swim in Clear Water, that where the colors instead have their own symbolism and their own meanings to me, and I tried to use simpler digital tools like warping and manipulating the shape and build up constructed environments. Another theme that I worked a lot on, besides the landscapes, was urban environments. I love cities. I love the urban environment, so I did a lot of photography and photo painting out of that. And this is a more abstract, but it's called Cascading Waters, where it's very impressionistic, but still using the natural colors. Here's a much more lively, fun music. Plays a big part of what inspires my work. So you can see using the grid patterns of buildings and lakes and those kinds of shapes are starting to find their way into my work. This one is called City Whispers. It's more of an internal landscape. I've always been inspired by Moreau's work from an early age. I didn't understand what he was doing, but to me, it was magical and mystical, and I just loved it. So this, kind of working with different digital image shapes and techniques to start to build up an expression or a feeling or a sense of space was pretty important. This one is called Floral Chanting, where I began to work with trying to get a sense of shallow depth of space with bright and bold colors, because that's really one of the things that I truly love is bold and bright colors. Here's one called Hoodoo Wind. I'm I was working more on simplifying the work. I kind of bounced back and forth between wanting to simplify things, and then, in a large oil painting, you can get huge, simple areas of color. And if you do it digitally, it just looks like a big flat, and it's so totally flat that it's hard to be satisfied with that. So I kind of try to introduce some sense of complexity and depth and texture and movement of the human hand, even though, it's got geometrical hard edges. So I like playing with those two things together. So this one called Hoodoo Wind is kind of like the wind across the mountain landscape. In Oregon, it really gets wild here sometimes with the wind coming in out of Alaska and out of Canada. And this is called New York City, Love from the East Side, which was, I kind of did a series in black and white and just tried to introduce smaller amounts of color to let them sort of have a bigger voice by being a smaller sense of color, and working more with patterns and to define shapes and volumes in my compositions. This is called Oceanside, where I have, symbols of the sun, symbols of water, the beach, trees. And so it allows, hopefully it allows a viewer to kind of wander through this in a sort of choreographed form in their own direction. The title, I think, kind of sends you down a path, but it's up to the viewer to really make up their own story. Another theme that I work a lot on is I call moods and states. It's more psychological moods, states of mind, states of being. This is called August Heat. And this was one of my only international sales. I had a show in Portugal, and this was one painting that sold. But it was kind of that hot feeling of August, that warm, with nice cerulean blues and hot reds and oranges kind of working together. Sometimes I take a break from the bold colors, and I did quite a few works where I tried to do more neutral colors. This one's called Awaiting Colors Return. Still using patterns and kind of learning more how to build up geometric shapes and patterning. This one is called Fragile and Complex. It's more about, I guess, how I was feeling at the time. So it has that thin, fragile, delicate lines. That has a certain complexity in here that I think helped. A lot of some of the works that I do, I have that inner landscape aspect to them. Here's one, Happy, Happy, Happy. So obviously lots of bright colors and buoyant energy, and kind of resting in a field of neutral grays, which I really like, how grays and blacks can help give a place for color to work. This is called Journey and Judgment. How, this was, I was thinking about how in our artistic journey, we have a lot of self-judgment about what we're doing, whether it's good or whether it's bad, or whether it's working or it's not working. And it seems like it's a constant fight to get it one way or the other. This one is Shamanic Dreams. I love New Age music along with jazz and classical. So it was that kind of deep rhythm and sense of symbolism and movement that was brought on by that. Soul Lights, another kind of interior landscape. Winter's Castle. And I'm trying to, you can see using a small amount of, at this time I had already switched over to Photoshop because primarily for its control over the color that I got and being able to shift and move the color around even after I had done the work, and I do that a lot. And it had its own set of paintbrushes, and I kind of felt like I didn't want to use Painter anymore because I didn't want to give fake impasto brush strokes, because I felt like it's digital, it's two-dimensional, it's flat. I mean, you can get a certain shallow depth of field, but pattern is a natural form of the digital world. Bright colors are a natural form. That fluorescent colors, those are all aspects of our modern day world. And I said, okay, let's just use those forms, and hopefully that will, because I love it, and I think other people kind of relate to those elements in the work. This is called Wonderful Tonight with You. That's a jazz song that I was working more and more on simple repetition and bold color with areas of complexity hiding beneath. So give it that sense of layers and movement and disintegration and reintegration. Here's I have under the music things, blues songs that has elements of nature and the mood, I think, of soft yellows and deep blues and violets. This one is called Bright Horns. That has that sharp clarity and power of horns and kind of this fragmented, syncopated rhythm to it. This is called Cello Song, where I was listening to some cello music with its vibrato, and that's kind of a literal interpretation of the music and movement and tone and color. Okay, jazz. This was Jazz in the City, which was kind of interesting because I used a lot of the linear elements and with counterpoint, and I got this printed on aluminum, and all of the light white colors actually became the aluminum underneath. So it was kind of nice. It worked out pretty well. Most of the work I get done, I get printed in by Whitewall in Germany and on their photographic paper, because it tends with a matte acrylic overlay, and it gives it a nice soft look of a print, and the colors are very rich, and they're not as saturated as they appear on the screen, but they still retain a certain vibrancy and a trueness to what I originally envisioned. This is called Modern Baroque. This one I printed, it was 4 feet by 3 feet, so it was a pretty good sized print, and it turned out pretty well. See, Music Lost in Echoes, Samba and Verticals. I love Brazilian music. It's a lot of fun and very energizing. And I was listening to that for about a week while hello, that was fun. And here's Schubert, number 8, one of my favorite pieces. And then under symbolics work, contemplation. It's kind of a head-like figure with that meditative sense of color and lines and form emerging into and blending with space. Crossing over again, it's another head, mind moving through a depth of complexity of ideas, deepening mystery. Exotic flowers, icon face, primordial, and spirit blooms. And then about a year or two ago, I started working more on series work, where I take a certain set, like a new invitation to color was, my kind of rethinking my color theory about using harmonious colors or analogous colors or neutral colors or saturated colors and how they work together. And I just put them, the structure that I put them on was more geometric and pattern based. So I had a series of working on those ideas together. This is some of them, I did like 15 of them. new invitation. And then I'll skip ahead to this one. Color structures was more about using a geometric scaffolding structure to put the colors on and give them some sort of a form, using pop art elements, with the big dots and black lines and outlines, and having the compression of a vertical space with the yellow horizontal lines. So, and then the last couple of years, it's been more refinement of those ideas. It's an incantation of freedom, using a really deep buildup of texture with dots and painting and scratching, and then areas of flat color. So at this point, I only use Photoshop, and because it's giving me plenty to work with, and it seems like the more I paint, I do something almost every day. So I have literally thousands of works. Here's more colored threads, gives it that depth of field, entangled. Okay, that's about it that I wanted to cover. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Gary. Does anyone have any questions? You could just shout them out if you do.
No questions, but I'd like to compliment you. That was a very strong presentation of wonderful work.
Oh, thank you, Lee.
I have a compliment and a question. Am I unmuted? I love all your colors and the color palette experimentations. And I was just noticing now, seeing them all go by, that it seemed like all the compositions are perfect squares.
Yes. Well,
Actually, like a difficult aspect ratio. And then I know everything's square now because of NFTs and Instagram and like everything is square. But I wondered if
yeah.
you ever experimented with more, rectangular formats.
Oh yeah, yeah. I have several thousand works, and I just happened to pick these because they were easy to organize. But
Okay.
yeah, I have long and narrow, tall and narrow. I kind of gotten away from pure squares. I like a slightly elongated rectangle, now vertical or horizontal. For the reasons you said, it's a more natural way to look at a painting. I think if slightly in portrait or landscape has that aspect that clearly defined, and square is, it works for Instagram, but that's about the only place.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ann.
Gary, do in terms of resolution, your pieces, they're sometimes what, 3 by 4 feet sometimes? Do you work in 300 ppi in Photoshop, and do you print them out to, what's your final product?
Yeah, actually, I have a pretty powerful system, but I usually work at very low res, 40 dpi. And because that way I can work very fast, because I've worked with Photoshop now for 20 years, so I don't want to be slowed down while it's cranking along doing stuff. So, and then so when I get the work 99% done, then the last steps is I work with color and adjusting and fine tuning with using curves and that kind of stuff to get the color exactly as I want. And then I use a multi-step process. I go up, if it's say 40 by 40 inches or 42 inches. At 40, then I'll go the same size, but I leave it at 80, and it keeps the same pixels. And then I start bumping it up until I get to 300 DPI, the same size. But I found that I have to do it in 2 or 3 steps, no more than doubling it each time in order to retain the fine clarity of the color and the purity of the lines and that kind of stuff. Otherwise, it gets a little fuzzy. And that's just because I've done a lot of experimenting and reading. And I've tried different software that uses fractal for enlargement and that kind of stuff. But and then, once I get it up to that size, then I use it as a maximum JPEG and send it off with the sRGB color space. And Whitewall seems to do a really great job with it. And plus, they ship it back in a really great box. So if I have to send it off to a show somewhere, I already have the box built. All I have to do is put on the hardware and sign on the back and ship it.
Do you think about layers at all, or do you just more spontaneous and just get it?
No, I do hundreds of layers, but the way I work is I'll build up basically every color and every shape, every brush mark is on its own layer, and I build it up until I get to a certain point, and then I commit to it. I collapse it. So at that point, there's no going back. And then I'll build up more layers, and then I collapse it. And then I build up more layers, and then I collapse it. So.
And you may have said this, but do you use a Wacom pen, or do you?
Wacom tablet.
Yeah.
A medium-sized one, and the monitor I have is a Dell monitor, but it's color calibrated. And you can pick which color space you want. You can use Adobe color space or sRGB or whatever one you want. So the colors I see on the screen are what gets printed, which is really nice. Before that, I had a spider and I had to do my own color calibration, and it was a pain in the ass, and I wasn't really that happy with the result. But once I got this monitor, it really made things a lot easier.
Well, thanks. I enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, I had an Epson 7600 printer, and so I used to print on everything I could get my hands on. I used Ink-Aid, and I'd print on watercolor paper. I'd printing on any kind of paper that I could find get my hands on, and that's where I kind of learned through a lot of failed examples of, blues tend to go black and reds turn to go brown, and at first I just kind of lived with it, and then I kind of tried to adjust it, and then I learned, over time as things got better and more available in the world from Adobe and other places, that you could get more and more accurate results, And now with printers at 1400 DPI, I mean, you can't see that at all. So 300 is plenty for the most part for prints. Thanks, everyone.
Hey, Gary, I just had one comment about your, I love your work. I love your the vibrancy and the whimsical attributes. But I got to tell you, I'm a real fan of the square format because square really is the perfect format, and I don't have to work. I'm not distracted. And there was a very famous New York photographer, Jovan, who shot everything horizontally because the orientation of our eyes, he said, well, we see everything horizontally, so that's the way I'm going to shoot. But I shot with a Rolleiflex, which is the square format, and to me, I could do anything with it. So I wouldn't don't abandon those squares. I love them. I think they're very versatile. And if you like a really flat, matte paper for your work, Fuji makes a very nice flat matte.
Yeah, that's what I do, just Fuji Chrome.
Okay, I was going to say, because Fuji is balanced to white. And I've used it a few times. Yeah, I just love what you do, and your versatility and your production it kind of makes me want to go home and do some more work because filling me up, son. But always a pleasure, Gary. Thanks.
Thank you.
Gary, I really like seeing the evolution of your work. I appreciate that, so thanks for that. And I also noticed that for me, a lot of your work has almost sort of a collage feeling to it, and it really reminded me of some of the early 20th century artists. And I was just curious if you were going for that at all, because it looked like you know, looking at, you know, strictly like from a Photoshop standpoint, what I couldn't tell, but I assumed that you had either beveled some of your layers or added some shadows in there, and I thought it really helped stand out shapes and colors really nicely. There really felt like almost like a cubist sort of feel to some of the pieces. Like I said, it just felt like really, really beautiful collage work.
Yeah, that's kind of something that's evolved in my work lately. Primarily, I started looking at works from Barnard Newman and Frank Stella,
Okay.
and people like that, and digital. The collage, the cutout is because a lot of the times I'll take a part of a painting that's not working very well, and I use a hard edge selection, cut that out, and then paste it with a drop shadow.
It works.
Yeah, and sometimes, and I found that I have to use like 2 drop shadows, one that's very tight and dark, and another one that's softer. And Photoshop lets you do that, so it gives it a more natural depth, and that's why I said that's one of the tools that digital artists have. So yeah, I'm going to use it because we don't have brush and pasto, you know. So
it's very effective. I really it was great to see the evolution of your work. I think that for me that was really nice, and I really like where you've gone with so much of the work. So yeah, kudos.
All right. Well, thank you, Gary. Thanks for sharing with us. And thanks, everyone, for all those questions and comments. And I guess we'll move on to Roz.
Hi, everybody. Maybe you want to take a 9th inning stretch or something. But yeah, a little breather, relax, move.
Yeah.
I
Good
know.
idea.
The water.
I mean, really. I used to lead an exercise program when I worked in the World Trade Center with the Wall Street Journal Online, and I had everybody come over to my cubicle and we did these ridiculous little exercises because you really get into this box and can't get out. Well, I'm going to take us back in time here a little bit, folks. This is a CD I did in 1995. It's a animated piece called The World's Greatest Bar Chart, and the instructions are pretty hilarious. I mean, it says require Macintosh platform 8 megs of RAM. I mean, really. Set your monitor to 256 colors, sound volume up, double click to play The World's Greatest Bar Chart. This piece, I was working I got in digital early, and then in the 90s, I got in the 80s, actually. I took one of the earliest courses at School of Visual Arts, but by the 90s, I was working, doing pieces in commercial work and showing in international digital shows, early ones, and curating. And I could have gone to Pratt and taken a graduate course, but they said, oh, you could teach half of these. And then the digital world, I'd go in to support my habit. And they said, oh, you can do digital, you have digital shows. So I started working inside corporate, which I had never been trained for, but I found it fascinating to do commercial art. And I was always at the World Trade Center for some strange reason. I live nearby too. But this piece, The World's Greatest Bar Chart, was done when I was working for Lehman Brothers. And we would go in, I was on the shift from like 3 to 11. It was all these creative people. And we had a blast, actually. But we would it was just constant doing Excel charts that would go out to digital of bar charts and spheres and money, money, money. And my work seems to always somehow be about Americana in some way, whether it's guns, Jesus, money. And this piece, I would go home at night after doing all these bar charts and I would just be working on my own work. So I'm going to go just share the screen. What's happening now is here it is so many years later, and I am still working digitally, but I really want pieces like this to be rolled up so people can see them. This was made in Macromedia Director. Animation for me, watching pieces like Randy's and other people working in animation, for me, animation is always and remains a way to go deep inside that flat digital, but for me, spiritual space too. I always find it amazing, this flat space with millions of layers that has no texture, you know, none. Even when I painted, I rarely got into texture, but I love that illusion. And you know, it's been quite a journey. So I know I was going somewhere there, but I guess, see, when you're 67, you go, now what was I gonna say? Anyway, I'm going to now share my screen. And oh, I was saying how animation is for me all about going in what I would call the mathematical Z space of a painting. And even my recent Diamondscapes, where you go online and it looks like a slideshow where you're going from left to right. I'm using old technology and easy technology to go inside a painting. And I want my Diamondscapes to be things where you're actually image mapping deep into a digital piece, because it's fascinating to me how much data can get on this screen is awesome. I mean, even Gary's pieces had that. There were chunks of real complex stuff going on, and that illusion to me, I mean, it can't be done in painting, you know, it can, but you can't unearth those layers and share them. And that's where animation has always entered the picture. And I had actually gone home and made this piece called The World's Greatest Bar Chart in 95 or 92 or something, and later animated it. So I'm now going in with my programmer. I'm going to share my desktop. You guys seeing this? It says click to start. It's very small.
Yes, it says it.
Yeah.
Believe me,
Yep.
get ready. This is maintained in the resolution it was made. And so welcome to the world's greatest bar chart, where we enter a bar chart that is completely insane in terms of what it measures about money and stuff. Always modest.
This cyber painting wants to be explored. As you may have guessed from its title, it is about the human species' obsession with comparative analysis and measurement. Like most art, however, the piece is in itself inexplicable and mysterious. It holds no answers. Have fun. If you have problems, go to the question mark.
Now I'm still working on this, and keep in mind that this, you can skip that intro at any time, but I didn't want y'all to miss that because it's so inspiring. But this piece, I'm working on it, and we went back in time with my programmer, young programmer, who often says, Roz, I wasn't born when you did this, but which is rather mollifying. But we went back in time, and he was able to emulate this piece on his going back in time. And we're rolling it up to be on this website to be open source coded so everybody can go into it. What happens when you go into this world's greatest bar chart is you roll over the outside images, and when you click on them, it's a sound work as well. And when you click on these various things, different sound tracks come up.
Why you have to go and kill yourself tonight?
And just various odd, crazy pieces. Can you guys hear me too? It's a little loud. You can always turn off the sound by going here. Here's the question mark with things about the piece. But what's interesting, as you roll over the various pieces on the outside, If you go inside the piece, it brings up other animations.
In the mind.
And I'm clicking to turn them on and off. And so it's a sound work as well. And I was always directing Carmen on these pieces, but let's go to another sound and go up to the vitamins up here. I'm up here in the vitamins. I know it's a small little screen, but this is how big it is. Remember resolution at that time.
Our fructose, which absorb in manganese, hallowed be thy skin balance. Thy calcium oxylated, thy ester C on beta, as well as fructose. Recommend.
That's a vitamin prayer I did to the Lord's Prayer. It's a total spoof on the Lord's, well, not a spoof, but it's all about your health. We did this by, I think we had our sound, boom sound in a toilet or something. We got in a lot of funny situations doing this. Go inside the flag. And I'm still adding things to it that aren't quite in there yet, but it's a whole sound. It's a way of immersing inside a bar chart that is all about nonsense and basically measures nonsense. And we're getting very close to launching it. And I'll just show you that when you do redo this, when you click start, you can just click on the start and skip the intro. So there it is, the world's greatest bar chart. I'm wondering, you know, I want people to have it. I want them to, I think with everything going on with money right now, it's very relevant to the situation, especially the whole, you know, NFT thing as well. I mean, I'm excited about it, but the money thing is always something I'm kind of laughing at and also trying to not to get too, like, just part of the herd. I mean, to me, I want to make some kind of spiritual and emotional and reflection on the space. I mean, I'm doing this new piece called The Birds, and it's all about the birds talking about NFTs and the ridiculousness of it. And the, you know, because I have to put my arms around it as an artist and reflection, not just as, well, just about the money. You know, we got to remember, why are we artists? What are we saying? But I am trying to think about this, and we'll open it up. I'm just showing one piece right now, but I've been working on this for about a year, just trying to get the pieces back up. And I still think it's a very relevant piece to the situation right now. But here it was done in 95, and, you know, done in the World Trade Center, like the mecca of money, if ever there was a center of money in the United States, that is now, you know, fallen to the ground. And different pieces came up after that that were a little more spiritual and oriented about how things that we think are these monuments and they disappear. So I think I'll stop the share. I will say that I have a piece coming up in an auction very soon at the Little Red Schoolhouse. It's a pretty radical downtown, socially progressive, LBGT oriented school that's been around for years, and you get asked to be in this auction. I'm really happy to be in it. And I have a piece in it. Of course, you get nothing, you know, the life of the artist, don't we love it? But that's fine. It's a worthy cause. But I'm excited to have a piece, and it kind of relates to the bar chart because it's a piece I did after Donald Trump was elected. And it's a piece that's called Fake Art, Fake News, Fake Elections. And it was a one-off I did. Really came out of, I was in Manhattan the day after the election. It came up a month later. I did this piece, but it kind of relates to the bar chart's whole kickoff on money and what's important about it and what isn't. And it's I put it in for the bid. You have to put it in a starting bid, which it goes up on the auction block through the Little Red Schoolhouse. It'll be in a Chelsea, New York gallery, but also on Artsy. And my bid, they put estimated bid and then asking bid, and I put my estimated bid at 45 million for number 45. And so, and I put the starting bid at 450. So it's kind of funny to be having a piece like this going up for auction along the same time as I'm working on this old world's greatest bar chart, also done in the mecca of, you know, American capitalism. But Artsy wrote back and said, what's the meaning? Why is this artwork going? We need an explanation for why it's estimated at 45 million. So I wrote a little description and said, you know, it's integral to the piece that I'm showing about the election of billionaire Donald Trump, number 45. So anyway, just giving a little context of then and now. I'm going to stop the share. And if anybody has some thoughts about the world's, I mean, I have made a few NFTs, but I don't know. I have so many digital works. I could take them and put them up as NFTs. And I've sold work over the years, digital pieces as prints and different things. And here's a piece I'm taking. And I guess the question, if any of you have opinions about it, is I'm kind of in a place with NFTs of thinking, I think I'll make it like either unlimited and everybody can buy a copy of this for $50, or make it very specialized and rare. And yet it really brings up the whole thing about rarity in digital art. It's like we're enforcing rarity, but that's been going on for a while, even with lithographs. You know, a lot of them don't wear down anymore. You just decide how many prints. Anyway, I'll just open it up if anybody has anything to say.
Well, you know, in terms of rarity, I think one of the things that the internet economics showed was that if you sell something for $1, you're not going to make a lot of money. But if it's $1 and 1 million people buy it, you've done really well.
Yeah.
And you've gotten that exposure, you know, because they think, oh, it's only $1, I'll buy it. So, you know, depending on if you really want to blast it out there and have people enjoy the content of what you're saying and expressing, you know, that is a route that I would certainly look at. You know, it's not like you're doing a masterpiece that you're only going to do one print of, and you have this.
Oh, it is a masterpiece. Of course it is.
Well, of course it is.
You can
a masterpiece. So was that still done in director, Macromedia's director? Or?
It was, and you know, it's totally, you know, Rhizome with the New Museum is recently relaunched their art database, which I have a piece in Pale Mail.
That was a Flash programmer.
It was done in Macromedia Director, and later I converted it to Shockwave. But you know, these things are no longer, you can't play them, so that's one of the issues.
Yeah, I was surprised that you were. I didn't even know it was still around.
Well, it isn't, and that's what I'm doing with my programmer. We unearthed an emulation, and now we're remaking it from really cleverly making videos into GIF animations and bringing it back to life, so people can experience it today, because it speaks to the monetary BS that's going on, as I've said, with the NFT.
Yeah, it's a timeless masterpiece, that's for sure, Roz.
Oh, yes, thank you. But I do like bringing access and letting people, you know, reaching a larger public. I've always been interested in doing that as a digital artist and getting it out there. So I am kind of thinking of, maybe you get a link, and we thought maybe we'd put it up as a NFT animation, or there is a still image too, but it's very small. You could get a printout, you know, or just the still image could come with it. And we thought maybe we let whoever buys it, you know, the first person, we go, oh, we'll put your photo up inside the animation. There is one picture in front in a dollar bill. I don't know. It's just a lot of ways to think about how to market things.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that I think is interesting about NFTs is that even if it's owned, the general public can still view it and experience it just the same as the owner, you know? So it sort of makes it, you know, it's an interesting question. Like, if you price it very low, you know, everyone can own it, but is that different than one person owning it and everyone else can just consume it in the same way, you know? And your piece definitely, like, you know, it brought me back. I did a lot of work with Director and Lingo and all that kind of stuff. And actually, Steve Miller and I did an interactive web-based piece that used QuickTime VR, which is extinct. And we tried to, like, figure out a way to make it, you know, playable on the web. And, you know, I talked to a bunch of people. There's a great list in New York City. I think they're still around. It's a listserv called WAC. It's the WWW World Wide Web Artist Coalition. But it's basically mostly coders, you know, and so, like, one of the people on there was like, well, you know, you could run a run a server somewhere running a virtual machine with an older version, of server software, and it could be actually running it on an old version of Mac OS with the QuickTime plugin and stuff like that, and have that remotely served in some way. Seems like a lot of trouble though. So,
it is, and then I wanted to make it interactive and make it live again. It's a piece I really support in my collection and want to go on and live. So I happen to be working with a wonderful coder, and yeah, we have picked it apart. And that's another thing too, Colin. The thing about the NFT is that I have to either give a print with it or something, because it's up there on the web. We've made it into a website so anybody can go see it, and I don't want to prevent people from seeing it, but I might make a special experience with a password for people who buy it, something like that. But I don't know. I'm open if other people have a thought about it.
I mean, there's another coin. There's another coin that's coming out called Materium, and run by out of London by this guy named Vinay Gupta, who runs the company and that sort of thing. And what they do is they do NFTs that are kind of like indexes to physical objects. So they're kind of like indexes to physical objects. They're sort of like a certificate of authenticity rather than the piece itself. I mean, that in looking at, the coins that are dealing with, the ideas of a physical object going with an NFT itself, this is one group that's doing it. And one thing I also want to say is that I also did I mean, I know what you mean with this obsolescence sort of thing, because I did an entire documentary for the Smithsonian American Art Museum on urban sprawl in 2000. And I mean, I had a big commission for it. And the thing is that it ran real player video and it ran QuickTime VR as panoramas. And I mean, I can still, I still have the print panoramas. They're gorgeous. But the thing is that the interactive installation, it's still somewhere down on one of the Helios servers at the museum, but the technology is totally broken.
Right. Yeah. And yes, and that is an issue with digital art. I will say the new museum, I attended a webinar yesterday on the new museum, rhizome.org.
Yep.
And I know Colin has like quite a few pieces in the art base, and I have one and some others. But they have just made a new, you might go check it out. It's I think it's rhizome.org.artbase, or it's artbase.rhizome.org.
Yeah, they just resurrected the art base. Yep.
They did, and they've got a new way, like if you go into my piece, Pale Mail, and you click on it, it actually links to the new interactive piece of the piece behind me, and yet they're showing one that they got in 2007. So,
okay.
But they're using this new wiki data and base and customizing it and using a coding program so that you can really delve into digital art from all different aspects and share it and search all the database by either, like Shockwave, who was working in Shockwave, and you can put a date and what were they doing. And so it's a new database to be looking at. Rhizome is spelled R-H, yes, thanks, Patrick, R-H-I-Z-O-M-E. Started by Mark Tribe in 1995. I'm sure Colin knows about it too,
I used to go hang with them over in Soho. They had a before they went into the new museum, they had an office over on Spring, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I was thinking of a digital art digital fossil museum. But anyway, I guess Rhizome's doing that already.
Yeah, they are. And then I don't know, I think it's good for people to see. I mean, the 90s, as we know, was a huge .com scene.
Yeah.
Big and very creative, a ton going on.
Mm-hmm.
But the past is important, but I also love being here with this group and seeing what people are doing now and going ahead. So it's a good combo.
I think though, but getting things like it's like you and I are both part of the 90s scene very much. And the thing is that I think that what happens is that you have a lot of people, who are in kind of the post-internet scene, who are in many ways, I mean, especially in VR right now, they're they're recreating a lot of the things that we did in Second Life, or recreating things that were done in the 1990s and that sort of thing. And I mean, on one hand, whether there's a new context, there's some new content, to me, sometimes I find it a little bit frustrating, and it's like, oh, here's this new stuff, and I said, this looks amazingly like the stuff we were doing in the 90s.
And there were artists, true, Patrick, and I know when I came along, and thought, oh, I'm doing everything and it's new and different. And there were certain experiments going on 20 years before me, and coding and all sorts of things, So it's kind of a cycle, I believe, that happens.
Yeah, and the whole 8-bit aesthetic that's going on now with people trying to make everything look like those old school video games, or a lot of the internet memes like that Nyan Cat, or however you pronounce it, that looks really pixelated and stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, I love what Sue Dean is doing, because it's from a different point of view, really. She's coding, but I have to say, like, early pieces, the pixels, I mean, it was all about that, and you really, it was hard to, I mean, that's one thing I loved about it, was showing those dots, that's why I got into digital art, is they invaded my oil paintings, all these crazy electronic squares. So it's interesting to see where it's going now. And the fascination with the pixels, it's still there. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I liked to see that piece. It's nice to see that piece again, Roz. I remember when you showed it at the Code Show in '95, very early on. So I think it's fun and exciting how you're resurrecting it, with the current technology.
Oh, thanks, Victor. It's great. I know we were hanging out in that crowd then, weren't we? Did you come to Code?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Great.
Roz, did you happen to go to a show that was down in the downtown? It was the Guggenheim Soho, the show called Mediascape. I think it was in the late '90s, maybe, but that was just a mind-blowing show. That had installation-based work, and Namjoon Pike installation. Namjoon Pike installation was
Bruce
in there.
Wands, I think. Was he the curator, Bruce Wands? I'm not sure.
I think so. Yeah.
He did the whole SVA, School of Visual Arts. They were huge in the early days, and Bruce was a big part of that. Bruce Wands and it was a few of the shows. They would have big shows at SVA, but I think he did that show, and it was very impressive.
Yeah, I remember there was one installation where there was like a stationary bike, like an exercise bicycle, and then there were screens, and it was connected. So the faster you pedaled, the faster the virtual environment went by you. And back then it was like mind blowing. It was like couldn't even believe it.
That was Jeffrey Shaw's Visible City, wasn't it?
Legible. I think it might have been, yeah. And there was another
right.
piece that sticks out in my mind where it was like, and I think this artist is still working. I don't know the artist's name, but it was like a grid of like wood panels that was hooked up to like a photo sensor, like a camera was forward facing, and as you walked by it, they would flip, to like make the image of what was in front of it, and they would make this little click noise.
That's Danny Rosen Wooden Mirror.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, that piece just. It's like right in my mind.
And by the way, Colin, if you remember, in 2006, for a very fateful critical theory class, remember I did that 48-page essay on the pixel as aesthetic choice at the end of the 1990s.
That's right, digital minimalism, and I wrote my whole thesis or my whole paper on memetics. Now working on implementing it.
It's actually on academia.edu, actually.
Nice.
So anyway.
Nice. Oh, so I wanted to let you guys know too, now that we're in this sort of open session. So Anne gave me her essay for the NFT Now show recently. Actually, I think I posted it either, it's all blurring together, this morning or last night or sometime fairly recently. But on the Techspressionism site, if you go into the exhibition section, there is a page for that show, which is coming up, and the essays is there. There's also actually a new section on the homepage too, just called Essays, and that has a submission form where if any of you guys are writers and are interested in submitting essays, you could submit them through that page or that form, which I posted Anne's essay on that page as well, and that'll be just kind of like a starting point, because I think that one piece that's kind of missing from the site is really like some sort of a compendium of critical theory or essays that, you know, support the visual content in some way or look into it, you know. And kind of the only real qualifier that I have, and I don't even know, I mean, there might be someone that's interested, you know, in editing or, you know, sort of curating that stuff. I can't really say that's my core competency, but, you know, the only sort of qualifier that I included was that the text must include either Techspressionism or Techspressionist somewhere in the content of the essay. So at least it's, you know, somewhat, you know, propagating the idea. But, you know, I think that the essay is really interesting. The artists that she chose, you know, or a lot of them I'm not familiar with, you know, or hadn't been familiar with their work. So I've been helping her to slowly, you know, we're in the process of putting the material together, you know, in Kunstmatrix and stuff like that. So yeah, that's going to open up on May 5th, which is the beginning of Freeze Week. And the opening is, I believe, 6 to 8. There's an RSVP though on that page for the exhibition. You could also get there if you just go to nftnowshow.com. That's kind of like a shortcut, but we're going to do like a Zoom reception, and, you know, whichever artists can make it are going to, I guess, be invited to come. And I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do the reception, you know, like we did the last one during the last salon, which I think worked out well. But this one, I guess, you know, it's going to be a little bit more people sort of like outside of the group who submitted work, and certainly, you know, hopefully they'll want to also, you know, become more involved as time goes on. But it seems like a pretty interesting, you know, and diverse show that Anne is, you know, curated. And you know, we have yet to really completely solidify the installation and all that kind of stuff. So that's a little bit of a work in progress, which you know, we have about a week to go for that. So hopefully we'll be able to get that all organized. And yeah, you know, just wanted to put that out there. And you know, I'm always open also for suggestions or ideas with regards to the site itself. You know, recently it was changed around so that the show, the collab show, is on the homepage, you know, and that was kind of like a last minute decision where, you know, I was talking to a couple people, including Helen, about, you know, what do you think about this idea of just putting whatever's the current show right on the homepage instead of it being within an exhibition page. She really liked that idea, and I think that that's really frontlining, you know, the work, you know, and all the other stuff, the written content, to me is kind of secondary. I mean, you know, like honestly, like, you know, Warhol's famous quote or whatever, I never read, I just look at the pictures. Like, if I could do that, literally, I probably would do that. If I could get through life just doing that, I probably would. And here I am, like, talking about it, adding an essays section to the website. But you know, I do prefer just to look at pictures if I can. So and also that gives a, you know, that gives to me, like, that's something that's really appealing about Instagram, and why I like chose that platform as kind of like a jumping off point for this project in terms of a hashtag and everything else, is because, you know, there's no prejudice when you're just scrolling through a feed looking at images. You don't know anything about the images, you know, you're just looking at the pictures, and then maybe you click on it and you see like who it is or what hashtags are associated with it or what it's about, you know, but you don't need to read a whole preface or anything like that. And I like that, you know, I feel like that gives sort of a very, you know, the ability to have like a very gut reaction to things, which, you know, usually I think is a pretty true reaction. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. And yeah,
Colin,
you know,
quick
floor is
question.
open. Yeah.
On the homepage, we have the collab #1 right now. Will that change to the NFT, and will the collab 1 still be up, or how does that work with Kunstmatrix, or, you know, I'm not quite sure, and with Techspressionism?
Yeah, so we talked about, you know, like if there should be an end date for the show. And at this point, I think we're not going to have one. What I'm going to do is just at the time of the NFT show opening, that will be the show on the homepage, and the collab show is going to be accessible through the exhibitions page. You know, like basically that entire chunk of the page will just move to an internal page, and whatever the most recent show is, that's what will be on the homepage. But unless there's a real good reason to take them offline, which I don't think there's a real necessity. I mean, basically we have up to 1,500 pieces in our partnership with Kunstmatrix, so we can have up to 1,500 pieces uploaded to the account, which is a good amount of content.
Yeah, no reason to take it down.
Yeah, so I think, you know, and I'd like to get Davo's opinion on this. He's not in this meeting because I think he's recuperating from his second shot of vaccine. But what I'm thinking is, you know, the NFT show is going to open up May 5th, and then Patrick and I are putting together the Techspressionism 2021, which was sort of the original show that then, you know, these other shows kind of started popping up. So we had talked about maybe trying to time the 2021 show with the Wrong biennial, which I believe opens up on November 1st, right? Or somewhere around that time.
Yep.
So and I'm not completely clear on how that all works, but I think that to time it in conjunction with this other event is only going to drive traffic and interest. And I think what we can do is just kind of like at some point between May 5th and November 1st, the NFT show will close and we'll open up the second round of the collab, you know, once that's finalized. And, you know, I'll be talking with Davo, and then Brandon Gellis volunteered to work on the installation piece of that project. So, and I'd like to, you know, have these revolving roles available to people, whoever's interested in like getting involved in either the setup of the VR piece, the curatorial pieces, you know, writing, etc., you know, so, or editing, curating, that kind of stuff. And certainly, you know, if anyone really feels interested in getting involved in the website administration, you know, I'm happy to set someone up there too. I mean, it's a WordPress.
And by the way,
site.
just reference, like, you know, basically having it on at the same time as the Wrong is I mean, it's very, very simple. In other words, it isn't anything that, you know, that they'll probably have a link to our stuff up, you know, might be involved. You know, I'm hoping that since I'm on the board that, you know, we'll be involved somewhat in you know, some of the press releases and maybe some of the press going on. But the thing is it's really just primarily, you know, just you know, synergy of visibility, kind of like the NFT show being during Freeze, you know. So in other words, there's just these there's these potentials for, you know, for having these shared touchstones and that sort of thing that can you know, that can create synergies, you know, press synergies and that sort of thing.
The Wrong, when I went there, it seemed like it's kind of like set up as a randomizer.
You
like
know what? You know what? The thing is what you've seen right now is you've seen the Wrong as the TV channel, and the biennial is taken down.
Okay. How do they present that? Like, you know, how do they present the different participants?
Basically, the thing is they show it as they show it as a series of nested listings, you know, and so that's kind of it. In other words, basically, you know, the Wrong biennial homepage is basically kind of like an index of participants, and there are a number, just, you know, everyone is kind of different. So what happened is that last edition we had you know, we had what we called list curators who went around and basically did a sampling and took people on a Zoom tour, and you know, went through different pieces, and then you know, as I said, there's a whole different, you know, a whole bunch of different you know, types of engagement. But the one thing is that I'm talking with David, you know, lately, and Nagin knows him too, and the thing is that it's he seems to have a different approach for this time, and I'm still trying to unpack it. I'm still trying to get him to unpack it for me. So you know, but the thing is that it's you know, it's almost always gets in the New York Times, and last year We got a honorable mention for the Starts Prize for the European Union, which is basically the big cultural prize for the EU. And so, I mean, I think David also got a good chunk of money to build some infrastructure. Actually, I think the one thing that he's trying to do is he's trying to build a artist's social media platform. And that in the end, really what he wants to do is that he wants to help us all survive. In other words, he wants to be able to find ways for us to be seen and us to also have opportunities to have, paying engagements.
I hear you. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the way I feel about this platform, philosophically as well. I mean, that's kind of the idea behind it. It's like there's strength in numbers. I mean, maybe you could see if you'd be interested in coming in and presenting at some point. That would be pretty cool.
It would be pretty cool. He's a good friend, but he's also a bit of a different bird. And he might want to. You catch him on a good day, sure, absolutely.
Right.
So he's a good guy, though.
Cool.
He's very Spanish.
Colin, I have a question.
Sure.
I got the email from you with the Zoom link, and it mentioned the Techspressionism 2021 International Juried Exhibition. Has that exhibition already been juried, or is it new?
So it's still in the process of being curated. Like Patrick and I are meeting regularly, picking work, picking artists and stuff. The open call ended a while back. But basically, like the artists that are going to be included, and I think we're leaning towards it being 100 artists, total, and sort of like with a couple sort of sub goals other than it being all work that involves the use of technology for some form of personal expression within a fine art context, and those would be to have it be gender equal and to have it be as internationally diverse as possible. So
yeah, we got in so many pieces, and it's just kind of like I've gone through the call for entry stuff once or twice, and it almost takes me about 3 or 4 hours just to do a cursory look through on things. So it's I mean, I realize that a lot of curators, basically have the attention span for going through some work as your basic gerbil. But and I'm sorry, I'm joking a little bit. But what goes on is that I mean, I've been told by a lot of friends of mine, who are saying half the time they it's a 30-second elevator pitch, for the most part. And then when they see something, they'll drill into it. But yeah, exactly. So, what I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to, basically on one hand, honor the community, that's been very active. And then secondly, on the other hand, is that really try to give, the people who, went into a call for entry, a really honest consideration, because they deserve the honor of being, they deserve the amount of respect of being looked at and given an honest consideration, because, they paid the money and they took the time to put their stuff in. But, there are some people who threw some stuff in that is like, what the hell did you do? It's like, what does this have to do with anything? But, I get that with any of the shows that I curate anyway, so.
And like there was sort of a 2-part process to that, and part of that was that after the call for entry on callforentry.org ended, I went through the submissions. There was over 1,200 pieces submitted through that, and so and I saw what I found was that the majority of pieces that came in through Cafe were artists from the US, Canada, England, from English-speaking countries, whereas a lot of the artists in our index, were from other countries. They just never got the call for entry because, for whatever reason, most of the people who apply through that portal are from English-speaking countries. So at that point, I decided
Helen
to,
is definitely
sort of,
interested.
I'm sorry. So what I decided to do is I emailed everybody that submitted work through call for entry and said, hey, we're extending the deadline, but the first phase is over. The second phase is basically people who are in the artist index, which is the artist index on our website on techspressionism.com. And some percentage of those people went and started using the hashtag in their posts, and a bunch of them personally reached out to me and said, hey, can I get added to the index? Here's my website. And I sort of felt like the people that took that initiative wanted to participate to, a higher level than people who didn't, who just submitted work through the form and then went on to the next call for entry. So, that's kind of been the filter, is that was like top of funnel, as people say in the marketing world, and then as it goes down, the people that show up here time after time to the salons and stuff like that are the people, to me, that I consider sort of the core group of Techspressionists. What really signifies it other than active, ongoing participation, regardless of someone's CV or whatever else, you know what I mean? Like if somebody comes in from the outside and they have this amazing resume and they're represented by Gagosian, but they could really care less about Techspressionism or this group or anyone in it, well, they can go apply to some other digital art show as far as I'm concerned. So I don't know, that's just kind of the way I feel about it. Like to me, it's primarily a community. And, that's kind of like the approach that, and some of these other shows, like the NFT show, was more like a general open call where it didn't really involve active participation necessarily in the use of the hashtag or participation in these live events, but the live events really are, the closest thing to like all of us being together, in any sort of format, I think. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Because I always struggle about thinking about, what is this? What is Techspressionism? Is it a collective? Is it a movement? Is it just a website, a platform? What is it? And I guess it could be, initially on the website, I had this line which I had removed. I probably should put it back there, but and I stole it from 12-step programs where it said, you're a Techspressionist when you say you are. And I kind of feel like that's like what being an artist is too. No one can really say, people always like to say it, but that person isn't an artist or whatever. You know what I mean? But really, nobody can really take that away from someone else.
Hey, Colin, if you think about it, in many ways, I think about the exhibition of the first papers of surrealism in New York in 1942. In other words, basically what happens is that, you had people, you had the people we know as the surrealists, and also Duchamp came in and basically ran a mile of string through the whole place so you couldn't go through it. But the whole thing is that, in other words, that was an encapsulation of certain people who were involved in, a certain conversation and that sort of thing. And it was encapsulated in this particular thing. And I think that's really kind of what we're trying to do. And, I'm not thinking necessarily in, all these different directions, but I think to me, it's very simply that, people who are, people whose imaginations have been captured by what we're trying to do. And then, also, as the first papers of surrealism, that sort of thing, it encapsulated, a lot of people who were, who were active within the, surrealism as a genre and a movement at the time. And, I think that's, I think it's perfectly fine.
Colin, I was watching a YouTube video the other day. It was Ed Reinhardt, I think, was in it, and Bernard Newman, and they were talking about the abstract expressionists at the time in the 40s and stuff. And he said they were basically a community of people because they had no place to show. Nobody knew who they were. Nobody knew what they were doing. And they just got together to share their ideas and their love and they were all very different about what they did. And, but I have, when I heard him say that, I thought, well, that's what, what
We're doing
here. It's the same kind of empathy.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
I
what-
mean, really, it was like, to a large degree, Helen Harrison's support of this idea really early on, like even like 10 years ago, when it was basically just me and a word that I came up with to describe my own work for a title of a show, and she was like, she kind of latched onto that because she's an ABEX scholar and it probably resonated with her. And that gave me some level of confidence to feel like, maybe there's some legs to this, and then it took like a decade for it to be, and it was really the fact that another artist just went and called herself a Techspressionist in an article, who it was Oz Van Rosen. She hasn't been in this in a while, but she was at the first one. And that kind of like spurred me to think, well, maybe this could be, like a group in that
And
sense.
let's see if this is a conversation, right? And it is, and
Yep.
that's fantastic. Thank you. And it's fantastic that you did that.
I agree, Patrick and Colin. I mean, what I really like about this group, and again, I go back to the storyteller in me, is that it isn't just a group of people talking to themselves. It's like this sort of expansion web of conversations that we have here, and then we spread out around the world, which is just totally fascinating. So,
Well, this whole idea of recording it too, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't I think it might have been Davo's idea. But like I had kind of thought about it, but then I thought, no, people aren't going to go for that. They're not going to want to, have themselves recorded and be published. But I think that decision was really like a turning point for the group in a way, because, we're creating content now every 2 weeks that even, the rest of the world can see if they're not present, and I think that's something that's very different than, has really happened before. Like, it was just sort of like, I don't know. And then with the interviews that Roz, kind of developed, like, I think that, that also is, I mean, it's like, really like we're using all of the same strategies that corporate America uses, and I had through the years done for my clients, content marketing, all that stuff, and the product is us. It's all of us. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's kind of the point of it. And I'd like also to put out there that like Patrick just did his first interview with Greg Little, who is our graduate advisor, and I would encourage any of you guys to, and an amazing artist also. You guys should definitely check out the interview. It's the one that's on the homepage now. It's the most recent one. Like if any of you guys really feel strongly about either being interviewed or interviewing someone else, or being interviewed by someone else, definitely like get in touch with Roz or myself, and
I'm happy to as well. I'm happy
Patrick
to as
as well.
Sure.
Absolutely. The more the merrier, basically. I think that, and we've been using just Zoom to record the interviews. So and there is an interview format that Roz came up with. It's on the interviews page on the site, which is downloadable, and that's kind of like a guideline, for people to use as far as an interview format. But really, like, the idea for that too. Also, I mean, Warhol's Interview magazine, was sort of like, this idea of artists interviewing other artists. So instead of some journalists going and interviewing artists, it's just artists interviewing other artists, which I think makes it a lot more like a conversation and a lot more interesting.
I'm going to be interviewing Carter Hodgkin.
Great.
Really soon, so that'll be great.
Nice.
And I just want to say, Colin, that watching this group evolve, I think it gives the meat. There's a lot of meat here and a lot of content and educational focus without it being, pedagogical really, but it's it's more like it's evolved into something that I think is a real witness to what's going on at the time through artists who are doing really different and varied work. And there's a generosity in this group and an openness. You know, a lot of young kids were really getting turned off. I mean, I'm part of the newer gallery scene, so I respect that. But at the same time, it was getting rather archaic, and we're in this new art march into this new land that, I mean, it's been going on a while, but it's in a new sphere now. And young people, I like the way that this whole, you've kind of created a basis. It's not rigid at all, but there's something about this community that has been really warm and engaging, and also on a pretty top level. I mean, I've found most of the presentations to be really, really good and very different. And there's a real individuality to it and purpose. And I know young people have been dissuaded with the old art scene, and this is a new one. And I think it's got legs.
Yeah, I think a lot of the people making, you know, work now, and especially with NFTs, I feel like, you know, for all of the negative spin it's getting, there's a lot more people creating art on computers now because, you know, they believe that there's a market for it. And, you know, I mean, I think there is, you know, and I think it hasn't completely found its true sort of like usage case or whatever you'd want to call it, you know, but it's interesting to see people that probably would never apply to art schools or, you know, might not even have majored in art in college, making work and doing things that are expressive, even if it's like weird self-referential meme things. Like that's what our culture is all about, and
It's
that's
true, and
truth,
it's
you know.
rising visual culture. It's a rising visual language. You're right. Everybody's an artist now, but there's also a thing of taking all that and making a new language out of all of that, which is also going into the artwork itself. And you know, it's so yeah, it's beyond marketing. If it's just marketing, then of course that's important. But I think this group speaks to that rising visual language and how it's changing the art world and the world. You know.
I just
Yeah, and I
did
think also,
I'm just
oh,
coming
go
off
ahead.
a almost ending 2-week writers conference here in Boston through Grub Street, which is one of the largest creative writers support organizations. And I started to put in, you know, for all agents and everybody, my stories and things. And I'm thinking, I'm putting Techspressionist on everything because these are wordsmiths. And everybody I've talked to is like, you know, they just don't glaze over. They hear a new word, they go, whew. So it's been really interesting to see how the writer side of this is really interested in the word itself and what it represents. So.
Yeah, I found like a lot of times I have to repeat it a couple times to people. I know like my dad would always butcher it and he'd say, you know, oh, Techspressionism or Techspressionism, you know, and I have to say it like a couple times. And then finally he would get it. And I would just get this sort of feeling of satisfaction, you know, when someone else says the word, it's like, you know, the meme is propagating or whatever. But, you know, I mean, I think that word of mouth is extremely powerful. You know, I remember I was at an agency called Kirschenbaum and Bond. That's where I actually, you know, coded my first commercial sites. I did the agency site and then did Snapple's launch site through them as well. And their whole like philosophy was word of mouth marketing, you know, and they built word of mouth through creating these stories. Like, I don't know if you guys remember like Wendy the Snapple lady and these like weird characters, but like those were totally, you know, first of all, the letters were fictional, they were made up. You know, all the people in the TV commercials were just random people in the agency that they pulled out and said, hey, like, you know, you want to be in this TV commercial, which is pretty funny. But, you know, like Roz, when you were talking about, you know, corporate culture in New York back in the 90s, I mean, I feel like a lot of those people who were freelancers, you know, when they clocked out, they went and made some really crazy stuff, and like they didn't care at all about whether or not it ever sold, whether it was exhibited, because they had a good job. They were making money as a freelancer. So they just made whatever they wanted. And also these people had like the sharpest skills, you know, because they had to create for corporate America. So like they had to know the, you know, the software, you know, inside and out to be able to execute the ideas that, you know, the bigwigs, you know, wanted. So, you know, it's always, I feel like it was a good place to be.
It's another blurring of boundaries. You know, like that whole thing, commercial art and fine art, that didn't happen in the Renaissance. People worked together, and skill of craftsmanship and painting was all part of the, actually the financial situation. I mean, it was, you know, I mean, Jesus was like Coca-Cola, and, you know, I'm really into Jesus, but at the same time, it was more, you know, I think the separations that artists get ghettoized into in the last years I mean, we need to take we have the reins, and we need to take them. And I think it's fine to have a job that you do, and then, yes, like you said, go home and take those skills. I mean, people said, oh, do you live on your work? I'm like, yes, I was head of new media at, you know, doing creative direction at the Wall Street Journal Online, and then coming home and, you know, even inside it was creative. So I don't know, the whole corporate and fine art thing, there is a difference. We know when we do a piece and it comes out of the heart and it's going to speak to everyone in a different way, or we don't know, but they're different. But at the same time, you know, there's so much excellence within commercial art. It's incredible. So I think that what we're talking about here, and all these breaking borders and working with people across countries, it's a new revolution, you know. So
yeah, I remember there was a show, Zaha Hadid, who's passed away, but she was, you know, primarily an architect. And then I saw her show at the Guggenheim, which was like everything from architecture to prototype, you know, futuristic cars. And then there were these abstract wall pieces that were sort of like wall sculptures, all like in the same show going around the Guggenheim spiral, you know? And that really like was a very liberating experience for me, because I always felt like I had to hide the fact that I did this, you know, sort of, you know, advertising work from the art people, because it's sort of like, you know, you have to put the beret on, you know, and you're the artist, you know, you can't be some other person. But then, you know, I saw that show and I was like, wow, like, you know, she is presenting herself in a very holistic way, which I think is, you know, healthy. And like, you know, like with Michael Price, you know, Spy Hunter, I mean, come on, that's art right there. You know, I mean, so
definitely. Yeah.
Anyway, we're getting right around the 2 hour mark, actually. So I am going to close the recording out, but I want to thank you guys for
Colin, to give you my feedback on what you and Patrick were talking about in terms of the 2021 show. I really do feel that the way you're approaching it makes a whole lot of sense, because every person who's signed on or wanted to be part of this is like a little mosaic that helps define what Techspressionism is. And those of us who have been really active, I think just it's organically shaping itself. I mean, sure, we each have our own different starting point of what brought us here, but we're all helping. I mean, I can't tell you, being here in Phoenix, it's like there's like nobody that I've really connected with, that I've connected with as closely here, and you are all, you know, miles and miles and miles away, but I feel closer to you as an artist than I do with people that are in my, you know, in my neighborhood here, who are also artists but don't get this technology based stuff. And so for me, that's what's drawing me to this. And my contribution, whatever that might be, is I feel is being supplemented by everybody else's contribution. And I think the more that we participate, the more we clarify, and it's going to change and mutate over time, of course, but it doesn't feel top heavy to me. No. And that's what I really, really like. I like the organic quality, and I love the substance. It's the substance that everybody brings to this that, to me, makes it consequential.
Well, I mean, one thing I want to share with the group is that I was very, very, very active with a couple of groups. One called The Thing, that was basically for a while housed in a half loft in Postmaster's Gallery out in Chelsea. before they went up to like I think 10th Street or whatnot. But then on the other hand is that and then that got involved with Rhizome with when Mark Tribe, now it's Galway, first started. And the thing is, I was in Canton, Ohio, which basically with Greg Little, by the way, actually. But what's kind of interesting is I knew him long before I studied with him. But the whole thing is that, except for going to some things like the International Symposium for Electronic Arts or something like that, there was none of this stuff around. There was no community. And the one thing that was fantastic is that I could get on the net, and there was this, community of really open, generous people. A lot of them were in New York. But the whole thing is that in many ways, this is how I got my start. This is how I basically became a virtual New Yorker. And there's a guy named Blackhawk who was, she's a famous painter, but I can't remember her name. But the thing is that was her son, but he wrote for Flash Art. He was a fairly prominent critic. And so the thing is that we were part of these communities, and these communities got really, really tight. And the one thing that I always loved was the fact that I would go to New York, and Blackhawk would get the whole gang together, and including a lot of people who are still well known now. And the thing is that when I came to New York, we'd have like a 50-person dinner or party or something like that. And it wasn't it was amazing. But the one thing is that Blackhawk always told me, it's like when I came, it's like people are basically off doing their own thing. It kind of gave a excuse for the the New York new media community to come around. But the thing is that I think that within these genres and that sort of thing, there have been certain people with a certain amount of generosity that have created these communities. And I think that they've been so vital to me as an artist. And this is why I love this place. And, I would like to say is that, if there was an epicenter to this, I would love the fact that, it's like Nagin and I go some places that, there'd be like 40 of you, come out and we'd go out to dinner and talk about what we were doing. I think this is the sort of generosity that I would like to
nice.
be. So that's
absolutely.
Yep.
And I want to make sure that there's redundancy also, because like for instance, this summer we actually literally like closed on selling our house, and a week later we closed on a house in Vermont. So we're going to be moving from New York, escaping New York, just like that movie with what's his name in it, which like I kind of feel like I'm that guy right now, like running from like the crazed COVID laced Long Island Expressway, and moving to Vermont. So like, there'll definitely be periods where like I'm sort of in flux or whatever. So I mean, I'm definitely glad Davo has been, stepping up to moderate, but also like if anyone else is interested in serving as a moderator or whatever, like I'm happy to like,
Yeah, I can probably pull a couple. Sure.
Spread it out or whatever, so that we make sure that the wheels keep turning regardless of what goes on. But at any rate, I'm going to count down. You guys are more than welcome to stick around after we close the recording out, which is going to be in 3, 2, 1.
Bye, everybody.